Greetings, my name is Kerry and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm bringing you a recent reads video. I'm actually going to be filming two of these again today because I had an essay due in last week and so I didn't have time for filming when I hit my 5-book marker for my recent reads videos. So I've actually read 11 books since I was last able to film one of these videos, so I decided to split them into 2 videos just so I can talk a bit more about the books in a bit more detail. So I'm talking about 6 books in this video that I read fairly recently. Hopefully I can remember enough about them. So without further ado, I'm just going to talk about the books. So the first book that I'm going to talk about today is Jade City by Fonda Lee. I'm not going to talk a lot about this because if you've been watching my channel you'll know my thoughts. I have filmed a book diary for this which I will link below for you. This was our Space Sirens pick for September, so I'll also link our live show where we talk about it. We had a really good discussion about it actually, but I did not enjoy this book. I really wanted to, a lot of my friends really love it, but it just wasn't for me. And that happens sometimes. A book can be really hyped, can be really popular, can be really well loved, but it just isn't the right book for you. I go into a lot more detail about my thoughts about it in that book diary, but I'll just summarise it here. It's an urban fantasy novel set in a version of, I think it's kind of loosely based on Hong Kong in like the 70s. They have some technology that we have, so like cars and phones and aeroplanes and that sort of thing, but like not the modern technology we have now, so it's like a slightly older time period than where we're at now. In the city there are 2 rival gangs that control the supply of jade, and certain people living in this country, in this area, possession of jade enhances their natural abilities, but only certain people, so it makes them like stronger, faster, more perceptive, that sort of thing, and so they have to train to use it, and it's controlled by these 2 gangs, and this book is kind of the start of gang warfare between these 2 rival groups. It's very heavy on martial arts influences and gang movie type influences, which was sort of the main reasons that I didn't engage with it. That's just not my thing. I don't like those types of movies or books, so it just really wasn't for me. So I ended up giving it 2 stars just because of my lack of enjoyment of it. I thought it was really well written and the characters were really well put together, the setting was really good, so there was a lot that was good about it. It just wasn't for me and I didn't enjoy it, so I couldn't rate it higher than that. But that's just my opinion and I know it's a really well loved book, so yeah, go and check out that book diary if you want more of my thoughts on it. The next book that I finished was The Cursed Hunter by Bethany Atazadeh. This is the 3rd book in the Stolen Kingdom series. It is a retelling of Beauty and the Beast, but like a completely different perspective on that story, very different from anything else that I've come across that's based on Beauty and the Beast. So this is a companion novel, so you can read this without having read the first 2 books in the Stolen Kingdom series, but I personally think it makes more sense if you read them in order. This book follows Ness, whose family have got into debt and they are at risk of losing everything. Ness wants to make their fortune by finding a dragon egg. She is one of the few women in the town that engage in dragon hunting. It's mainly the men that do it, and she's kind of teased and a bit of an outsider because she enjoys that, she wants to do that. So one day she is looking for a dragon egg and she is captured by a dragon, but he doesn't seem to be like any of the other dragons, and the story kind of goes on from there of her trying to understand who this dragon is and what has happened to him. I really enjoyed this. I thought it was a really fun take on the Beauty and the Beast story. It fitted in really well with the other books in the series that I've read so far. Quite short, and it was actually a really good palate cleanser after struggling to finish Jade City. It was just short and sweet and to the point. And I really am keen to see, there's one more book to come in the series and I'm really excited to see how Bethany Atazadeh brings all those threads together from the other 2 books which follow more sequentially and from this book as well. So really excited. That comes out at some point next year, so I'm really looking forward to getting to that. If you haven't read these books yet, I really do recommend them. They're all based on different fairy tales, but they're all woven in together. So the first book was an Aladdin retelling, the second book was a Little Mermaid retelling. The first book is called The Stolen Kingdom, and then that's the name of the series. So really do recommend these books. If you like fantasy, if you like YA fantasy, and if you like fairy tale retellings, I think these are really solid ones, and they're not too long to read. They're quite they're all quite short. So yeah, really enjoyed that one. And I gave this one 5 stars, unsurprisingly, just because of my sheer enjoyment of it, really. The next book that I finished was Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates. This was a memoir, and I read this as an ebook from the library. I thought this was really powerful. It's written as kind of as a letter to his son about his experiences growing up as a black man in a world of systemic racism, and how those experiences have shaped him and his life, and what he wants his son to learn from that. So that setting, that thread of it being a letter to his son, just made the book really powerful and presented a slightly different view to some of the other books that look at the issue of racism that I've been reading recently. Yeah, this was good to have that slightly different way of looking at it. There was a lot that I enjoyed about it, but it was a couple of weeks ago that I read it, and it hasn't stayed with me maybe in the same way that some of the others have, but I was reading something else and it came up in it. I had to read some womanist biblical interpretation for one of my lectures, and she refers to Ta-Nehisi Coates to this book in that article. It was really interesting to have just finished the book when I read that article. I'm still trying to read a mixture of different types of books from authors of colour, novels that are based on their experiences, or novels that are just fun and show a different idea of what, like, where race isn't an issue, kind of, if that makes sense, but also non-fiction and memoirs that hold a mirror up to society and show all the flaws and all the problems. I think it's really important still to be educating ourselves, even though Black Lives Matter isn't hitting the headlines so much anymore. There's still work to do, and I think the divides in society are just so evident at the moment, and there's so much work to do to repair and build bridges across those gaps, and to aim for true equality in society where people aren't judged or treated differently based on things that they have no control over. Like, no one chooses to be born into an oppressed group. They shouldn't be oppressed because of a quirk of fate that has led them to be born a certain way, if that makes sense. Anywho, so yeah, I really recommend that book. I understand Ta-Nehisi Coates has a novel that's come out recently, and I'm really keen to read that because his writing was so beautiful, so lyrical, to see how that translates to fiction. I'm really looking forward to picking that up at some point soon. And so I think I gave that one 4 stars. The next book that I finished, I don't actually have my copy at the moment because I've lent it to my housemate. So that was Searching for Sunday by Rachel Held Evans. This is another non-fiction book, kind of somewhere between a memoir and an exploration of what church is and what it means to people in the 21st century. Rachel Held Evans was a quite influential Christian blogger who passed away last May. This book was her journey of growing up in the church and then moving away mentally, I guess, rather than, she didn't literally up and move cities. The church that she grew up in, it was very strict in quite a lot of ways, quite oppressive to her and her questioning and her doubts, and she really struggled with that. So she started exploring different expressions, different ways of doing church, and this book was sort of a summary of her experiences. And I found it really powerful. I could relate a lot to some of the experiences she had growing up, particularly some of the rules and regulations that get built into church traditions that harm people rather than accept and love them. So it was a really powerful thing to read, as I have been starting a course which is going to train me for church leadership. I really loved that book. I actually chose it as my favourite book that I read in October in my stats, if you've seen that. Yeah, I talked about it a bit in that video, so I'm not going to talk a lot more about it today, but it's a really good book for anyone that has been hurt by the church and wants to understand how people can still stand by this Christian institution, even though it can be so harmful. So if that is you and you're in the right place to do this, I would really recommend that book. So that was Searching for Sunday by Rachel Held Evans, and I gave it 5 stars. The next book that I finished was Incendiary by Zoraida Cordova. This was our Space Sirens pick for October. At time of filming, we haven't had the live show yet, but by the time you see this, we will have done, so I will link that in the description box for you. And I think probably by the time you see this, I'll have also uploaded my book diary for this book, so I'll also link that for you so you can check out my full thoughts on this. But in short, I really enjoyed this. I ended up giving it 4 stars. This is YA fantasy, loosely inspired by the Spanish Inquisition. It's about a people group called the Mariah who have different types of kind of magical abilities. So there are 4 main types, and I've forgotten what they're all called, but I do explain it all in that book diary, so go and watch that. And they are being oppressed by another country called Puerto Leones, who are gradually taking over the entire region and forcing everyone to become part of their country, and they don't like the Mariah, they don't like that they have powers, and so they are persecuting them. This was a really fun read. It starts off as kind of a bit of a rebellion narrative, then moves into a bit more of a revenge narrative, but there's also a spy theme going through it as well. Yeah, the main character Ren finds herself in the palace at the heart of this kingdom, Puerto Leones, and she's got to try and walk a fine line between being accepted by the king and his chief justice, but also still supporting the rebel group. And it's a really interesting interplay of how the characters work out, because the rebels don't entirely trust her either because of the nature of her power. She can take people's memories and because of her history. I don't know if it was intentional, but the way her character is portrayed, to me as someone who is recovering from PTSD, a lot of the descriptions of her character and the way her mind works were really, to me, spot on representation for PTSD. Yeah, I really enjoyed reading it from that sense, and I found Ren really relatable from that sense. As I say, I don't know if that was intentional, but that's how I read it as someone with PTSD. If you want to have a bit of an understanding of what PTSD does to your mind, then this is kind of, in some ways, a good explanation of that, albeit in a fantasy setting with someone with magical powers. But never mind. If you want to know more of my thoughts about this book, go and check out that book diary and our discussion, our live show discussion, which I will link both of those for you. And did I say I gave this one 4 stars? I'm really pleased to have read it. I've actually pre-ordered the next book because I'm really keen to see how the story continues, and that's out sometime next year. And then the final book that I'm going to talk about today is The Secret Adversary, or Adversary. I'm never quite sure how you pronounce that word. That's awful. I'm 33 and don't know how to pronounce that word. Anyway, so this is by Agatha Christie. This is the first book in the Tommy and Tuppence series, which is her shortest series. I think there were only 5 or 6 books in it, and it's more of an adventure style than a straight murder mystery like some of her other books, like the Poirot and Marple books tend to be. So this was really fun. It was one of her earliest books. It was published first in like the early 1920s, I think, and so it has that kind of after-war feel when everything is sort of trying to recover from the First World War, and that is quite key to the plot. Some of the events from the First World War are referenced in here. It centres around these documents that have gone missing, and there's one American girl who knows what happened to them, but she's disappeared, so Tommy and Tuppence are trying to find her, and there's this mysterious figure who I think they call Mr. Brown, and no one quite knows who he is, and he's like leading this like shadowy underworld criminal group, and there's a lot at stake. Yeah, it was really fun. The narrative switches between following Tommy and Tuppence and some of the other side characters. I really enjoyed this. I liked this sort of slow burn romance in it as well, which I was kind of expecting because these books were adapted for TV a couple of years ago, but set in a slightly later time period. Actually from the first book, I think, in those they presented Tommy and Tuppence as a couple, but I really enjoyed seeing the exploration of that relationship growing. It was really sweet. This is a really fun book. If you aren't sure about Agatha Christie, or you don't really like that sort of murder mystery style novel, then maybe give these ones a try for a slightly different style of novel from her. It was quite fast paced, quite quick read, and just really fun, really enjoyable. Yeah, I gave this one 4 stars. So those are the 6 books that I was going to talk about today. Let me know if you've read any of them and what you thought of them. Yeah, have a chat to me down in the comments about some of what you've been reading recently. You can also like this video if you liked it, and subscribe if you want to see more from me, and please also follow me on my social media where you'll hear more up-to-date information about what I have been reading and what I think of it. So I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, and I'm on Goodreads, and all that information will be listed in the description box below for you. But that's it for today, so thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye!